But now, especially with all of the delays and all of the mishaps,
The lost luggage.
if I were going to check a bag, I would absolutely invest in AirTags. Hello and welcome to the Worldwide Honeymoon Travel Podcast, the podcast that talks about all things couples travel, including destinations, tips, advice, and more. I'm Chris.
I'm Kat.
And this is episode number 179.
Yeah. And today we have a whole story as to what inspired this episode.
We do. It's been an eventful week here.
Yes, it's been a bit stressful. Especially last Thursday was especially stressful. I guess the story goes like this. Thursday evening, we're just hanging out. You know, we're not getting up to anything too terribly exciting. And Christopher was like, you know what, let's go look at all the lodges that we're going to be staying at in our trip to Africa at the end of the month. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. And then in my head, I had remembered earlier in the day when Christopher said he had read some reviews about the airline we're flying, Ethiopian Airlines. That's what we were supposed to be flying. From DC to Addis Ababa and then from there to Entebbe in Uganda. About the airline, we don't really know much about it, so we were Googling it, checking it out. Christopher happened upon a review on TripAdvisor earlier that month and just said something like, oh, someone had mentioned that if you have a one-way ticket, they won't let you board. It has to be round trip. And so I found this review just thinking back on it Thursday night. And I thought in my head, oh, this lady must be mistaken. Like, there's a lot of countries that won't allow you in the country if you don't have a return ticket leaving said country. So if you're flying like to Uganda, they most of the time they will want you to have a return ticket home. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be the same airline, but it needs to basically make sure that you're not going to overstay your visa, essentially. They want to make sure that you have onward travel. So that's a very common thing to happen in a lot of countries. So I thought that must be what this meant. Maybe she just only had a one-way ticket. She didn't have, a return ticket or anything. So I just was like, you know what? I'm going to call Ethiopian Airlines just to be careful, just to be absolutely sure that that's probably what it was. Well, I ended up calling and was told that yes, you have to have a round trip ticket with Ethiopian Airlines specifically in order to be able to board. So basically, Chris and I would have flown from Cleveland to DC and then would have tried to have gotten on, because we were flying United to DC, since it's all booked under United, with Ethiopian operating the big international flights. We would have gotten to DC and essentially been denied boarding and would have been stuck in DC trying to figure it out. So I'm kind of glad we happened upon the review. Just an FYI, in the future, this could happen if you're flying Ethiopian Airlines. I don't know. Just definitely call to make sure beforehand. So that was frustrating considering both United offers those award tickets sold as a one-way ticket and Ethiopian sells one-way tickets. So we ended up having to cancel that and we got our miles and all that stuff back, but we had to rebook our flights. And that led to a whole spew of things such as figuring out what airlines to go with. We ended up booking United again, but through Brussels. But then our flight from Brussels to Entebbe has a random stop in Burundi on the way. And then we were like, oh crap, what kind of restrictions and visas or COVID things we need to figure out for that. So we were calling and figuring all of that out. And it was just a crazy weekend of doing all of that, which has inspired this episode because travel's crazy right now. I mean, you have London Heathrow telling airlines to stop selling flights. You have Amsterdam airport saying no more checked bags, carry on only right now. There's just a lot happening right now when it comes to travel, between Europe's travel craziness, the increased demand everywhere, and very low supply when it comes to workers. And COVID restrictions in various places around the globe. So I think that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is just some tips for traveling right now based on what we've learned over this very crazy summer travel.
Yeah. Before we get into it, do you have a highlight from this past week?
Nope. No, I'm just sorry. didn't even think about it or write one down. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what we did this weekend. Sunday we is that bad?
You can say no.
Okay. Well, Monday, I know Saturday we went for, the winery. We went to the winery on Saturday, and that was a lot of fun to just hang out and relax, and it was very beautiful there, and just, that was a good time.
I agree.
Yeah.
I wrote down watching The Resort.
Oh, we started watching that on Saturday, which was good.
Yeah, it's on Peacock. Well, first of all, it was really nice to have European Premier League back. I watched that on both Saturday and Sunday, much to your dismay.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, but I don't think you necessarily want to watch it all morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we watched The Resort on Peacock, and I really enjoyed it. I will say that the plot is not terribly relatable to me personally. If I found a cell phone in the middle of the woods, I wouldn't investigate further. I would take it. I would give it to whatever authorities, and that is okay. And that's not a huge spoiler. But yeah,
it's in the previews. So.
It's in the previews. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. I really did. I think that it's a good mystery. It's the new episode, I believe, comes out this Thursday.
Ooh.
Yeah, so get excited. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. Let's just dive right into these 10 tips.
All right.
Let the people know how to travel in 2022 and beyond in this chaos.
And I think that that's the important thing, is that it's not just currently. I think it's 2022 and beyond, right?
Yeah.
Is in that if you stumble upon this episode in the future, first of all, thank you, future people. But it's stuff that has been going on for quite a while, that it's not just a little blip on the radar anymore. Mm-hmm. I hate this phrase with a fiery passion. I have visibly gone blech when someone has said it, but the new normal or whatever.
Ugh.
Blech. But I mean, that's
what we're living in.
Yeah. Travel is complicated right now, and we've made a lot of mistakes this past year and learned a lot of lessons, and we would love to pass that on. So I will go ahead and start us off with a tip that you alluded to at the top of the episode, and that is to book round trip when possible. We are
not just Ethiopian Airlines.
Right. We are generally huge fans of racking up points on multiple different airlines and doing a one-way to our destination on one airline and then a one-way back to home on another airline. That just kind of presents a host of challenges right now, especially if there are issues like you were talking about with, you don't have a return ticket on our airline, or if there are issues with whether it be staffing shortages or strikes or what have you, kind of really focus on the one airline that you feel the most confident in, because then you're not introducing additional variables. Now, some trips it's not going to be possible to book round trip, right? If you're visiting, say, more than one country, for instance, or just different areas within a country that have two serviceable airports, you may not be able to book round trip.
But maybe try to do an open jaw ticket where you book going into one city and out the other.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
On the same airline.
On the same airline. I think that that's probably the most important thing right now. So book round trip when possible. Prioritize the same airline.
All right, number 2 is book refundable everything. Even if it's going to cost you a little bit more money, it's probably a good idea right now. And also, the closer to the date that it is fully refundable via cancellation, the better. Whether it is a hotel, a train ticket, flights, etc. If you can get it refundable, or at least get a travel credit if it's an airline, something like that, always a great idea. Learn this, and I'm very thankful that my sister and I did this, because in July, I was supposed to go to Provence with my sister for 10 days, and we had booked everything refundable. We had booked this back in like December, and we were like, we're taking no chances. We're going to keep it refundable just in case. We even did refundable airline tickets, hotels, everything. For the most part, what we could get refundable. There was like a handful of little things we couldn't. But because of that, so in July, I ended up catching COVID, and we had to cancel our trip. There was no way that I would not be negative for COVID, or not. I shouldn't be flying, I guess, at that point. So we ended up rescheduling our trip and got everything refunded. And I think I was only out like $200 or so for some random like non-refundable train tickets that we had purchased. So really $200, not too bad. But got all my money back for everything else, which was great. And we were able to rebook our next trip. Or trip later this year without really any issues. So really helps to book it refundable, especially if you can't, I don't know, with insurance, like sometimes insurance can be kind of crazy. It can take a long time to hear back and things like that. Just if you're able to get stuff that's refundable, especially if it's closer to the date that you're checking in or things like that, always a great thing to do. So if you have the chance, yes, it usually always costs a little bit more money on airlines and on everything to get it refundable, but I think it's really worth it right now, just in light of if you have COVID or you get sick and you can't travel, or things get canceled, things just go nuts. Just the option to be able to cancel within a certain time frame and get all your money back is a great idea.
Absolutely. And that plays very well into our third tip, which is if you are going to book trip insurance, which we recommend doing, book cancel for any reason policies.
Yes.
Now, you're going to have to do some research because different companies have different restrictions on when you can actually book cancel for any reason. So a lot of them are shortly after booking or paying like your first deposit for that trip.
Yes, that includes like a hotel, a flight, anything that you have paid for a trip, even if it's like $50 or anything tiny. If you are paying it for that trip, a lot of the time it's within like 3 weeks. So I just say if you're planning a trip and you book anything in regards to that trip, go on ahead and book cancel for any reason, because we were going to do that for a trip we have coming up and saw that in the fine print that it basically doesn't work if you don't book it within a certain time frame. And so we can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have trip insurance, just not cancel for any reason.
Yeah.
Trip insurance. But yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think it's necessarily important for trips that you would feel like financially comfortable with maybe getting some money back or something like that, right? Like if it's like a quick weekend getaway or something like that, we never book trip insurance for that type of stuff. But if it is a more significant trip where you are investing a lot of money, and man, that would really suck if you do not get that money back, go for cancel for any reason, especially because you don't want to be haggling with an insurance company about, well, was a flight cancellation weather related or staff related? And is that on them, or is that like an act of God or what have you, right? So you don't want to be going back and forth. We're still going back and forth about a trip insurance claim that we made back in June.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
determining if the reason for our flight getting canceled was, I don't know. It's complicated. I hope we get something back. We're not going to know for sure until they get back to us. But
I'm not confident in it, but
yeah,
knowing that cancel for any reason insurance is available, go ahead and book that if it would be worth the peace of mind for you.
Which is great. And yes, it is more expensive, but I recommend looking into Seven Corners. That they have both some more COVID specific additions to their plans, as well as cancel for any reason insurance that you can add to your plan. So that's a good place to look at if you want to look at more cancel for any reason insurance and more COVID specific stuff, etc. All right. Number 4, show up to the airport early. As much as it's, it just depending on the airport, it can be fun to just get in pretty quickly and just go right to your gate and board. I would not chance that these days, especially with, oh my goodness, I can't tell you the amount of videos I have seen of people getting to the London airport and there is a line all the way outside for people trying to get through security. So get there with lots of time, especially in a lot of European airports right now, especially big capital cities, big hubs like Amsterdam, London, big cities like that. Get there really, really early, way earlier than you think, because these lines can be very long. If you are in the U.S., having TSA, pre-check, global entry, clear, those things can be very helpful when it comes to airports and speed things up in the U.S. I'd still get in a little earlier. I know even when we travel, we both have global entry, which includes TSA pre-check. We still get to the Cleveland airport 2 hours before our flight, even with the expedited flights, because we've missed a flight out of the airport before we had global entry. But still, it's just not worth it. I'd rather just get there early, hang out for a little bit, and then make sure that I'm on my plane on time. But yeah, some of these bigger cities in Europe, especially this summer with all the chaotic travel, 5 hours might be a good idea. Yes, it might be boring to be in the airport. Bring some books, get your Kindle, download some Netflix, something like that. But just showing up early at the airport is a really good idea, just to make sure that you don't miss your flight and you have time to get through security, customs, whatever it is that needs to happen. I would also make sure, just as a part of this, that make sure that you do not have very tight layovers. So if you're going to have a layover somewhere, especially if it is an international to domestic to international, etc., make sure you plan in quite a bit of time to go through customs or even just switching terminals and things like that. You just never know. Good idea. You can't cut it with a 30-minute layover in JFK. You're going to need more time. What's number 5?
Number 5 is to build in a buffer day. And we recognize that this is kind of like a luxury option, right? Because you may not have the option to build in a buffer day. But try to think about your trip with the lens of what if something goes wrong, right? What if your flight is canceled, which is incredibly common right now, and how would that throw off your trip? It may be worth it to build in a buffer day where you land and you just kind of relax that day, and maybe even don't make plans for the following day, just kind of like a down, explore, but nothing concrete sort of thing.
Yes.
Things that you wouldn't mind not being able to do. The buffer day has come in handy for us twice this summer, and it's honestly something that it allows you to kind of get acclimated, especially if you're making somewhat of a significant jump in time zones. It may be something that we just do going forward, because it is a nice little introduction to a trip, and it makes it far less stressful if you do get that dreaded email that your flight is canceled.
Yeah, and we kind of learned this one the hard way back in May when we were going to Italy. It was Friday. We're all excited. We have an evening flight. Christopher ran to Target to get some last minute supplies. It's 5 hours before our flight leaves. So we're almost ready. We're almost fully packed. And I got an email after checking in the day before, got an email that our flight was canceled and was pushed to the following day. There were no options to rebook of the current, during the current day. It was absolutely impossible to reach anyone in customer service, whether it was online, social media, or even on the phone, to find a way to book with another airline. Nothing like that. So that's when we ended up booking the last minute plane to leave that day. And Christopher basically rushed home, and we went straight to the airport to fly United after that. That's where we're trying to get our travel insurance through. If we had built in a buffer day before that, if we had left on Thursday, or if we had planned to spend an extra day there and just planned to have a full day just in Milan, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. The reason why we had to book a last minute plane ticket instead of just being I guess we'll leave tomorrow, is because we already had a tour booked for Sunday. So we needed, Sunday. So we needed to land Saturday and then take the train Sunday and then start our tour. Versus if we had a buffer day and we didn't have anything going on Sunday, it wouldn't have been a big deal if we showed up a day later and then did our tour from there. So having that buffer day would be helpful. That's what we planned for our current trip, the trip that we're going to be going on here in a few weeks. After all the chaos, we were you know what? We're going to leave Saturday. Our trip really doesn't begin until Tuesday. So We're going to land on Sunday, and we have a Monday as a buffer day in case if something like that happens again. We have that Monday. So, great idea to have. Number 6, pack carry-on only. Now, we've been big carry-on only travelers for years. It's just a lot easier. It's cheaper when flying it a lot of the time. You don't have to pay to check a bag or anything. You save some time at the airport because you don't have to wait for your bag. And you don't have to worry about your bag getting lost because, well, it's with you. So packing carry-on only is a really great idea, especially right now when I'm not sure if you guys have seen the news about airline travel, but Amsterdam Airport has said just stop doing checked bags for a time. London Heathrow had photos of just the stockpiles of lost luggage that they had. So many horror stories this summer of people losing their luggage and not being able to locate it. So packing carry-on only if you can is a really, really great idea. But if you need to check a bag, let's talk about number 7.
Yes, if you have to check a bag for whatever reason, maybe you just can't fathom the idea of just traveling with a carry-on.
Or maybe you need that much stuff. That's fine.
Exactly. At least invest in a set of air tags so you can actually see where your luggage is. If you don't know what air tags are, they are essentially like a little tracking chip for your luggage. So that way, when you are talking to someone, you can say, hey, it is at, I don't know, this airport at this location. It's being stashed in this office. You can tell them exactly where it is so that you can hopefully retrieve it if it is lost. Something that was never really talked about in the past, right? Like I remember that we have only checked baggage once, and that baggage was wine coming home, and unfortunately the wine was lost. But like it was just like you submit a claim and they deliver it to your door, right?
Well, and it was quite simple. This was in 2017, shipping wine home from South Africa, and it made it all the way to
Not
Chicago.
Checking.
Yeah, we checked it. It made all the way to Chicago, and they just forgot to put it on the plane to Cleveland. And there's so many flights a day from Chicago to Cleveland. So by midnight, I think we had our wine delivered.
Yes, it
wasn't a big deal.
Right, but the option for air tags was not even on the radar then. But now, especially with all of the delays and all of the mishaps,
the lost luggage.
If I were going to check a bag, I would absolutely invest in air tags.
Yeah, and the price is escaping me right now, but I think it's like $100 or 90 something bucks for 4 of them. So if you buy a pack of 4, it's great. If you're gonna check a bag right now, highly, highly, highly recommend investing in an air tag. Because that will help you track it. And I've seen so many people who have gotten their luggage lost, but they had an air tag and they were able to call and get their luggage returned to them much, much faster because they knew the exact location of their luggage. So definitely a great idea because you don't want to show up somewhere and not have your luggage for days to a week on end during your trip versus just a simple phone call and saying, hey, this is where it's at. Number 8. Have everything done at least 24 hours in advance.
This was a lesson learned by me.
Yes. Make sure that you are fully packed. Everything's ready to go. You know, you check in, all of that stuff. You have all of your, everything ready to go.
You're not running to Target for travel-sized toiletries 5 hours before your flight.
Well, and you're not searching for your passport. You know where your passport is. You know where your, everything that you need you have ready to go by the door 24 hours at least in advance. Because if something happens and you have to rebook your flight or something like that, it's nice to just have it ready to go if you need to rush to the airport. Such a big thing we learned with Italy. Yeah. And definitely something we're going to be doing coming up on our trip to Africa is just being completely packed and ready to go 24 hours before we get on our plane. Just a great thing to do just in case. You don't want to be running around the morning of and miss an opportunity if you need to change your flight or something like that.
Wow. I can feel the daggers.
No, we talked about you going to Target.
We
it wasn't
did
a big
miss
deal.
We did miss an opportunity though.
That is true. I had found a cheaper flight, not direct, but I found a cheaper flight on United to get us to Milan, and I had spent so much time trying to figure it out with travel insurance and calling Christopher while he was at Target and couldn't get a hold of him, that by the time I finally got a hold of him and he was like, yeah, just book the flight, it was gone. And we had to find something else.
Womp womp.
Yeah. So it's good to be ready ahead of time.
Yeah. Number 9 is to thoroughly research the airline requirements, destination requirements, and any layover requirements. This could be anything from testing requirements. There's a lot of countries that don't require testing right now. There are some countries that do.
And it's changing constantly.
It is changing constantly. The language is often very ambiguous. We have called airlines multiple times to see if answers are consistent. Unfortunately, they're not. Kat has emailed embassies.
And called embassies, yeah,
to get answers. And at this point, we're just going with like, man, we hope the majority is right. Like if we asked a question 6 times and we got 4 yeses and 2 nos, well, let's hope the yeses are right.
Yeah.
But there is information out there, but it's really important because airlines are changing their policies, countries are changing their policies, whether it be a layover, whether it be entrance, what have you. So be sure to thoroughly research every possible, or not every possible, but every single stop, variable, etc., so that you know what you're getting into. Because the last thing that you want to do is show up to the airport and be denied boarding for something that was easily within your control.
Yeah, or not so easily.
Or not so easily within your control.
Well, yeah, for example, our flight, we're flying Brussels Airlines from Brussels to Entebbe with a random stop in Burundi at their main international airport. And we've gotten so many mixed reviews. They've all said we don't need a visa because technically we're not getting off the plane and we're not leaving the airport. Which some countries do require, even if you're just there for a layover, you have to have a transit visa. So I made sure that we did not need that. But the COVID requirements as far as testing, because to get into the country of Burundi, you do need a negative COVID test, PCR, 72 hours in advance. So while we are fully vaccinated, which is fine for Kenya and Uganda, for our tiny 1 hour and 10 minute stop in Burundi, we were like, what do we need? And there's no clear answers anywhere. We got so many mixed reviews, so much so that we were like, well, we're just going to book a 72-hour, we're going to book a PCR test 72 hours before our flight and hope for the best, that everything goes well. And hey, if we don't need it, we don't need it. And we just know that we don't have COVID. But if we do need it, then at least we have it, which is great. So yeah, just making sure you know all of that. All right. And number 10, budget or build in emergency something, whether on your line item on your budget. Maybe save a little bit of money. I know that even with insurance, which is always a great idea and I highly recommend it, it can take a long time to get that money back. So you may be dropping $1,000 for something only to be told that you're not going to get it for another 5 or 6 months. So make sure that this isn't going to cause any financial hardships on you. So whether you just have a backup emergency fund in general, or you just want to build in a little bit of money into your budget as just in case emergency sort of money, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything huge. I mean, it can be as much as you want, but maybe at least looking to cover change fees. If you have to change your flight for whatever reason, do some research as to what the change fee is for that airline. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be a good minimum. Yeah,
and maybe a little bit if you have to quarantine, maybe a 5-day hotel stint somewhere, something like that. Just something just extra, just in case that you can pay for it right now, because a lot of the times with travel insurance, it is you pay for it and then you get reimbursed later.
Yeah.
So as long as you have that extra money to spend, it's not a big deal, but you don't want to be scrounging for $1,500 to change a flight and hotels and things. And and not have that money, and then you're waiting months and months for travel insurance to reimburse you.
Exactly. And we've talked a lot about like budgeting for trips and how we go about it and all that kind of stuff in past episodes. And I know I can see that you have your CPA hat on right now. But it's always nice to be able to return from a trip and not be stressed financially. So
yeah, I love to budget, and I budget pretty conservatively just in
Yes.
case.
yeah, but always a good idea. Those were our 10 tips. Just
Yes.
as confident as I am that travel is unpredictable right now, what is fairly predictable is that I guarantee you that you have one bonus or honorable mention or something. Is that right?
I just have one bonus, and that is something that we've recommended always is to sign up for the Smart Traveler. So just Google Smart Traveler. It's through the U.S. government. If you're a U.S. citizen, you sign up, you just say the dates you're gone and where you're going, and that just kind of hooks you up with the embassy there. They know that you're going to be there. So if something happens, like you lose your passport, which I recommend making photocopies of in case you do lose it, but if you lose your passport, if there's an emergency, they will reach out to you. Like we get emails and updates about places that we're going through this program. Anything like that, it just helps because they know that you're going to be in that country for that many days. So if something were to happen, they're aware. Just a general tip and advice to sign up for the Smart Traveler program if you're in the U.S. But those are our tips. That's a lot. Lot of changes and different things to think about this year and beyond in the travel industry, especially with the chaos of travel right now. But that's it. Let us know if you guys have any tips or anything that you've experienced. Have you guys had so many crazy travel stories this year? We'd love to hear them. You can always reach us on Twitter at WWHoneymoon, Instagram at Worldwide Honeymoon, or email kat@worldwidehoneymoon.com. But thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to rate and review our podcast. It takes less than a few minutes and really helps other people find us. Also, if you're enjoying this awesome free information on both the blog and podcast, when you're booking your next trip, head over to worldwidehoneymoon.com/resources and use the links provided. We earn a small commission at no cost to you when you book through these links, and these are all brands and companies we know, love, and use, like Skyscanner for finding the best flight prices, World Nomads for the best travel insurance, TripAdvisor for hotel bookings and reviews, and even Amazon for all of your travel purchases.
Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Wherever you are, wherever you go, remember to make every day a worldwide honeymoon.